everyone, welcome back. So this is going to go up probably a day later than it should, simply because the time today that I was planning to film, where I would have had the really lovely natural light and all that stuff, we got weather and the thunder was so bad that there was no way I could film. I tried and it just didn't work. So I had to wait until basically after kiddo went to bed. And so it's not going to be up till probably a day later than it should. Sorry. So we were going to start off October with a wonderful witchy story because, you know, what a great way to start October, because it's all nice and Halloween-y, but I really still just have a really nasty taste in my mouth from the last What the F Did I Just Read installment, which was an alien romance. I mean, that one just so cringeworthy. It was so gross and creepy and weird, and it made me feel icky, and not in a good way. Like, no way. So I figured, why not cleanse the palate by doing another alien rom-com, but one that's less on the gross side. So that being said, the story today is Accidental Alien by Celia Kyle. I will say that when I looked at possibly getting the Audible, it had been listed as Alien Commanders Chosen. I don't know if it's changed since then or not, but I do know that on the Kindle edition, it is still listed as Accidental Alien. So, trigger warnings for this story include a human being abducted by aliens. There is a question of slavery. It's not really enforced or enacted on anybody, but it's kind of used more as a title to get around bureaucracy, kind of like a loophole, so to speak, but it is still technically there as a concept. We have dubious consent in regards to the relationship title, not the actual physical aspect, ironically enough, but the actual title of what the relationship is. And then also the biggest one is the fact that we have a character who their entire species is changed on a cellular level without their knowledge, let alone their consent. So that said, let's get into Accidental Alien by Celia Kyle. So this takes place years and years in the future. It doesn't really specify when, as far as I can tell, but it is far enough in the future that Earth, from what I can tell, has a single government, and we have established relations with other planets, and basically we're part of the intergalactic like trade group or intergalactic, basically a group of different species from different planets that work together. So one of the things that Earth brings to this trade agreement that we have made is that we train and send out ambassadors for moving ships for other species, seemingly, from what I can tell, primarily for Doshan ships. So the women are screened, they're trained, and they're implanted with a translation device, and they go out and they do their jobs. So our lead female is not an ambassador. She is the secretary to one of the higher-ups who is in charge of overseeing the training facility and the matching process of finding the right ambassador for the right ships and all this stuff. She comes across our leading alien male, who is Commander Kede Tria of the Bailey, purely by accident. Like, they're outside and I think they just run into each other or whatever. And in the interaction, she kind of, she takes a little bit of a stumble and she falls and she scrapes her knee. And Kede seems to kind of overreact to this and basically brings her back up on his ship to be treated. We find out later the reason why he overreacted the way he did was because on his home planet of Dosha, there had been a sickness that had gone through years ago that had basically wiped out a lot of the females. So they are very highly regarded. They were already highly regarded anyways, but the protective nature really kind of went into overdrive. That I can understand, that I can appreciate. What I did not appreciate, and I'm sure Joyce did not appreciate, was the fact that Kede decided while she was on his ship being treated that, well, she's on basically the space version of international waters. I can claim her as my property now. And this is where the whole implication of slavery comes in. And he basically does this as a way to get around the fact that she's not actually an ambassador. So therefore she would not be qualified to be on his ship. So he did the whole, I'm going to claim her as my property, and I want her to serve me as my ambassador. But as I'm sure you figured out by now, that's really not what this is about. Because there are no women on Doshan ships. Again, the protective nature of Doshan women, they are not really allowed to, I don't know if it's that they're not allowed to leave the planet or just that they prefer not to, but for intents and purposes, they don't leave the planet. So the ship is full of a bunch of Doshan males. There's one other female who is also human, and she's also an ambassador, and she is not happy with the developments. Because very much like Joyce, she's like, you took a human woman from Terra, which is what Earth is, and they refer to us as Terrans, by the way, against her will, against the planet's government's will. I mean, you've broken so many laws doing this. And he's like, well, I brought her up here for treatment, and then, we were here, and I had the right to claim her, and she's mine, This whole time, Joyce has no idea what's going on. She doesn't know how to speak Doshan. Eventually, she is fitted, and the implant is implanted so she can understand what's going on. And it's at this time that she stops struggling and stops demanding to go back to Earth. And it seems kind of strange that she would just kind of flip, but we find out later why. So, she's very unhappy with Kede. She's trying to figure out what she's supposed to do here. She's not actually an ambassador. She didn't go through the training courses. She knows nothing about this job. And so she's trying to adjust to her life on a spaceship. Eventually it is brought out that, or learned that at least some people in Earth's government have been very, very, very naughty, and decided that'd be a good idea to put a self-destruction device into the translator device so that when the Terran women come back to Terra, they die. It's not really made clear specifically why. Like, later on you get some inferment as to why this might be, but it's not really outright stated as far as I can tell, outside of just, well, we want to try and keep things as top secret as possible, and because of what they'll see in space, they're a liability, so they can't come back. Like, maybe just put that in a job description. I'm sure there's plenty of people that just don't want to come back to Earth, horrible ex-boyfriend, horrible family, whatever. But I am digressing. So then, just as Joyce is really kind of coming to terms with all of this, again, she's not actually an ambassador. She doesn't know how to do the job, and there's nobody there for her to be an ambassador for right then anyways. So she spends a good portion of her time in the kitchen or the galley, helping out the guy who's in charge of preparing all of the meals for the soldiers. One day while she's helping him in the kitchen, she is hurt in a kitchen accident to the point where the doctors are saying there's nothing we can do. We can't help her. To which Kere, not having learned his lesson about, personal autonomy, tells the lead medical to physically change her species to Doshan. More specifically, using some of his DNA to blend with hers to make her Doshan, so she will survive. Now, I guess you could argue there is a bit of like you could see both sides here, because she was very out of it. She was in massive pain, like her body was shutting down. She was not coherent, and so in that situation, like if you were in a hospital and you were totally incoherent and you had no family there, the hospital would do the best they could, that they knew how, without input from you, because you're physically incapable of giving input. That said, I kind of feel like changing a person's species is maybe something that you at least try to reason with them about. But again, body shutting down. So I mean, I'm kind of in that position where I'm like, I don't really know where I stand on that, if I'm being honest. I see both sides there, but I'm like, it's like, it's her body, but then again, she would have died. I'm like, I don't know. I just don't know where I stand there. So she wakes up, and this is the part that really pissed me off. Like, I can understand both sides of the whole changing, medical treatment when you're totally incoherent. But after she wakes up and she is coherent, they actively keep it from her that she has been changed to a Doshan. And then eventually, when it is brought out that she's been changed to Doshan, they purposely kept her away from things like mirrors for a while, to, I guess the theory was to make the transitions more seamless, but I mean, she's going to see herself eventually anyways. Because Doshans have, each eye is colored differently, and the eye color reflects the strongest traits of their personality. So like someone who's like a truly evil Doshan has like a black eye, and like I think a deep red eye, as an example. So she's not happy when she sees herself and realizes that, oh, I don't even look like myself anymore, After she has been made Doshan, Kere basically claims her as his Harai, which is basically kind of like mate. So that means that there's basically his name changed from Kere Tria to Tria Se. And instead of Joyce Enner, it's Joyce Enner Tria Se. And again, Joyce is not told what Harai means or what the relationship means. So that's the dubious consent in terms of relationship, both on the slavery level and on the mate level. And eventually it gets to the point where she just can't take much of anything anymore. And she says, that's it. I want to be alone. I don't want anybody having access to my rooms at all. No override codes, nothing. No one can go in except for me. Understandably so. I mean, all things considered, I think this woman handled everything that came at her massively well. Forcibly taken from your home. Finding out you've been made into a slave when this happened. then having your entire genetic code completely changed to a foreign species from off-world, and finding out that the man who's responsible for all of this has claimed you as his mate. To be honest, I'm surprised she didn't start going on a killing spree. Personal opinion. So, and I mean, we're not even really to some of the heavier parts of the story, because now it brings in to question the idea of hybrids, whether or not they're true Doshans. So it's a way to get into, like discrimination and things. Then we start to really learn about the tier system on Dosha, because yeah, the warriors, Doshan warriors, are on these ships without women. But we find out that even if Doshan women were able to be on warships, they probably wouldn't choose to be, because Doshan warriors are kind of viewed like second or third class citizen. They're in charge of protecting the homeworld, but they're not good enough to be on the homeworld, kind of thing, which is so not cool. And then you have Joyce, who's here, and she's bringing her own viewpoints to things, and she's really kind of inspiring change in thought, so to speak. And by the end of the story, without giving too much more away, she's basically got the entire Doshan fleet wrapped around her little finger, and she's pissing off a lot of the higher-ups in the Doshan government. With, I might add, the implied backing of one of the most feared and respected of the alien council members, who are basically the ones who oversee making sure that the whole intergalactic trade group runs well. So he's like the head honcho in this. So you are left at the end of the story with the knowledge that she is going to help change the way the Doshan society treats Doshan warriors, and do the best she can to make sure the Doshan men, the Doshan warriors specifically, have a chance at a better life. So you are kind of left with this feeling like, okay, I don't like how we got here. There's a lot of funny shit that happened. Make no mistake, that the amount of just funny interactions will keep you going through the parts that infuriate you. But so we don't like how we got here, but she really has this opportunity to make a huge difference. And these men believe in her enough to put their faith in her for it. So started off kind of weird and messed up, but it actually ends on a really good note. And it does touch on a lot of really important societal issues that we still face in many places today. But it's handled in a really fun kind of way. And there's enough comedy and lightheartedness that you really don't feel like it's like super heavy. You know what I mean? We do get a lot of character development. Joyce starts off like kind of like, I'm not going to say meek because she's always kind of mouthy throughout the entire story, but she goes from being a mouthy person who feels like she doesn't have anything to back up what she says to a mouthy person who's like, yeah, I know I have things, resources at my disposal to back up what I say. Okay, I have an entire freaking army of Doshans and the backing of the big honcho guy. So come at me. It's kind of where we're at. And she is very much invested. Like, she did not want to take the spot she takes. I'm going to leave that there. I don't want to give too much away. But she did it specifically for the Doshan guys because she genuinely felt that they were not treated fairly, which I agree with. So she was literally taking this very stressful position for the greater good, which is awesome. And then we have Kere, who at first you really dislike Kere, or at least I did, but as you learn about how the Doshan warriors are identified, because again they use the eye color thing, and then once a male who displays certain traits are identified, they are taken from their family. Usually it's as young as like 6 or 7, and they are trained to be warriors. It's a very harsh, cold, violent way to grow up. And then after all of that, you are essentially not openly shunned by your own society, but kind of like, oh, he's a warrior. Thanks for serving. Stay away from me. You freak me out. That kind of a thing. And they have basically, for generations, denied the ability of having their own families. Because, again, Doshan women either can't or won't leave Dosha to be on a ship. And it is forbidden for Doshans to intermingle with other species. So that puts them in a position where they cannot have families. And you can dislike how he went about it. I sure as heck do. But you can understand, to an extent at least, the sheer, pure loneliness that would drive a person in that position to make that kind of decision. Not saying I agree with it, not saying I condone it, but I am saying it made me hate him less. And when you're in a position to see once the devotion that Kere has for Joyce is shown, and you see the depth of his emotion for her, I'm like, okay, I guess, he deserves to be happy too. So did these other guys, and I get where we're going. Okay, I get it. So, like, I'm not going to say that at any point I hated Kere, because I didn't hate Kere. I thought he was an arrogant a-hole. He still kind of is. But you kind of understand the thought process. And you can understand letting the impulsiveness control you in that situation. Again, not condoning it. Just saying, when you add the context and the nuance and the depth, it's understandable to an extent. So overall, I thought this was a fun story. It wasn't just a bunch of fluff, and it did have some really good storyline. It had some really good commentary on society and societal norms and ones that maybe should be changed. And it had far more to it than I thought there would be when I got it. I thought it was going to be a simple read, and it was super fun, and I do actually reread it every once in a while when I need a laugh. So that said, I'm going to give Accidental Alien a 3.7 stars. I hope this review was helpful for you. I did not bother, holding this up because it's my Kindle and it's going to be flipped backwards with a grainy picture, so I'm not going to worry about it. But next review will be the witchy rom-com that I was planning to do today, and that's going to be super fun. And I'll get to show you my witch's hat that I got for Halloween. So I'll see you all at the next review. You have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.